Honestly, thinking back on it, I don't know why I was so surprised that so many of these K-pop stans don't understand what kind of content they're consuming. I see so many people say things like, the K-pop industry is so greedy, the K-pop industry only wants to make money, the K-pop industry this, the K-pop industry that. And I just sort of feel bad for them. Sure, in a perfect world, the primary purpose of K-pop wouldn't be to make money. I guess I'm just surprised because it seems like so many people don't grasp the fact that K-pop is an industry. And it seems pretty ignorant to think that 99% of the things that these companies do aren't in the name of money. Before I say anything that might get me in trouble, let me just say now that I don't have any sort of degree related to business. From my point of view, everything that I'm going to be saying today is an observation or a conclusion that anyone is capable of doing if they just did a little bit of thinking, but as we know, most K-pop stans don't even want to do that. I'm also not trying to defend or justify these companies though. I'm just trying to shed a little bit of light on what I view as the reality of this situation, and if you disagree or have a counter argument for anything that I say in this video, don't feel afraid to let me know in the comment section below, because I'm always willing to have an actual conversation with anybody who wants to. Thanks so much for watching in advance, and now let's talk about how every K-pop company is greedy and there's nothing you can do about it. Now this topic isn't anything new. The discussion about how money-hungry K-pop companies are has gone on for decades. However, in the recent year alone, I've seen a lot of backlash that even extends to K-pop idols, talking about how immoral it is to do things such as repeating similar concepts for new music releases, and saying that companies and idols alike shouldn't be encouraging their fans to stream their music and buy their albums, since they view it as too quote-unquote greedy. And at least for me, I view this perspective as way too optimistic and overall sort of ignorant about how the music industry works. I've seen countless fans of different groups criticize their faves companies for following different popular music trends, complaining about how these comebacks are made with only the idea of making a profit in mind. And don't get me wrong, I'm always down for a critical discussion about the musical quality of new K-pop releases. I can totally agree with the statement that the retro and girl crush concepts have totally ruined otherwise perfect discographies. However, what baffles me is how K-pop stans don't understand why a group's company might follow these musical trends. It's almost as if K-pop stans forget that K-pop companies are companies. You know, they're businesses, and the goal of a business is to make a commercial gain. You can totally be upset when a group releasing music that follows the trends gives them a release that isn't as strong as their previous ones. But what I don't get is why K-pop stans don't seem to understand why they do this. You know, the retro and girl crush trends in K-pop became trends because they're popular, and when things are popular, that's where the money is. And while you can be upset with the kind of music that your favorite groups release when they follow the trends, I feel like there's a disproportionate amount of upset that K-pop stans tend to have, and it all seems to come from the point that people either don't understand how a business works or don't care to learn. I've seen so many different comments bashing on these companies for changing their group's musical image just to follow the trends, and I feel like less people would be upset if they understood why they do this. So let me just explain why I think K-pop companies do this from my point of view. And my first point is, people have to get paid. I don't necessarily blame K-pop stans for not keeping this in mind because obviously they're not shown all the time, but at a certain point you have to acknowledge that these K-pop companies have hundreds if not thousands of employees, and they're not working for free. Yes, it's sad when these groups build a certain reputation for their musical image and then change it just to follow a trend. However, I think it would be more wrong to continue putting out releases that follow your image even if you know they don't make you money. For an example, let's just talk about the obvious one that everybody's thinking about, and let's talk about Loona. If you don't know what I'm talking about, let me just explain really quickly. So Loona is a girl group that's really popular internationally, but not so much domestically. And for the first almost 3 years that they were releasing music, either as soloists, subunits, or as a full group, they built this super unique and complex storyline and musical image for themselves, featuring highly detailed and expensive music videos, and a lot of them at that, coupled with music that did not at all follow the popular trends at the time. While Blackpink were spearheading the girl crush trend, everything that Loona put out had this fun and mystical sound to it, and even though this unique soundscape they had built them a very large fan base, it was still very niche, and they saw little to no mainstream success. And after 5 years, we've finally seen how these poor business decisions have finally caught up with their company. While it's not entirely confirmed, if you look up Loona Debt 2021 on Google, according to the numerous web articles, because Loona's company invested so much money into the group before they had their concept change, the little amount of money that they made back means that their company, Blackberry Creative, wasn't able to pay most of their employees, and are now in a debt that adds up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. So many orbits or or maybe X-Orbits are very vocal about their rage towards Blackberry Creative. They don't like that the company has basically scrapped Loona's entire lore, and with their recent string of title tracks, they've more or less conformed to the girl crush trend. You know, these kinds of orbits probably feel betrayed. Blackberry had presented Loona as this group that doesn't care about what's popular, and makes music that's unique to them no matter what. However, what I view as the sad truth is that this kind of mindset will never work in the K-pop industry. And don't get me wrong, I do think it's possible to find success even if you don't follow the trends. A couple good examples of this are 17 reaching fame through their fresh teen concepts when every other boy group was doing something darker, and Oh My Girl having 2 cute smash hits last year during the peak of the girl crush trend. However, what I think a lot of people need to understand is that if a K-pop group is doing their own thing and doesn't find any success with it, it would probably be smarter to go along with what's popular. And in the case of Loona, they spent 3 years doing their own thing, realized that it wasn't working for them, and then switched to the girl crush trend, which garnered them awards such as their first music show win and other achievements such as finally appearing on the Gaon Hot 200. And while I did personally enjoy the music that Loona had before their concept change, I would rather Loona continue what they're doing with girl crush and find more mainstream success so that they can finally pay off their debts and their employees don't have to keep working for free. You know, you'll see these people who call companies who follow the current K-pop music trends greedy, but if they weren't acting in the way they were, would they even be able to pay their employees? And obviously not every company is in the same situation as Blackberry, but I also doubt that there aren't other companies that are dealing with similar situations. I mean, obviously the big three and Hype probably don't have to deal with this, at least not to the same degree, but there's such a plethora of mid-tiered and lower-tiered companies that are probably dealing with such a large amount of debt that they're unable to pay back. I mean, when you look at it, at first glance, you wouldn't be able to tell that Loona's a group with so many financial problems. They have such high album sales, and the amount of people that listen to their music internationally is nothing to laugh at. And even though they spent so much money on their pre-debut activities, you wouldn't expect them to be struggling at the rate that they are. So considering Loona's company is/was in such a large amount of debt, it makes you wonder what other groups and their companies are dealing with a similar situation. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, companies are greedy and they want money, but considering the amount of people that are trying to make money and a living through that industry, whether that's as an employee, an idol, a company manager, or whatever, I think it's a little bit ridiculous to get upset by this when so many companies use these tactics just to get by. I mean, yes, there is the big three in Hype, and I'd even throw Starship in there at this point, who don't really have any excuse to be lazy and greedy. However, there's such a range when it comes to companies and the financial situations that they find themselves in. However, it doesn't feel fair to lump all of these different companies with different financial situations together and all call them manipulative. Because in so many situations, these companies are following the trends and making lazy songs because that's what they have to do in order to make a profit or just scrape by. But again, this doesn't apply to every single company. Regarding music alone, mid-tiered companies tend to have the best releases in my opinion. And if you don't enjoy the companies that follow the current trends and the music that their groups put out, there's probably a different group out there that doesn't do what you hate for you to enjoy. You just need to look for it. As I said before, there's always a variety. Companies will have a variety of different promotional strategies when it comes to their group's music, and different groups will have different sounds that they either stick to or they won't. And another really big idea that I wanted to make is that I feel like fans tend to hold on to their anger a little bit too tightly. You know, you see all these people who are fans of Loona's older music repeatedly bash every single release that the group has nowadays. But in a case like that, they did exactly what they had to do. These kinds of people say that Loona should go back to their old sound, and to me it seems a little bit insensitive or arrogant to push this narrative when there are people who worked so hard on all of that pre-sound change content and then did not get a dime in return. Even if you're disappointed, you should be able to understand the reality of the situation and move on. But yet we still have people 3 years later dragging the company for doing what they should have done years ago. I mean, I don't, and I know these people especially do not have any idea what it's like to work in the K-pop industry. And how are you going to act like you know exactly what's best for the company and the group when you haven't spent a second behind the scenes? People act like it was a crime for Loona to abandon their older sound, but the real crime would have been to continue with that sound, knowing fully well that so many people who would work hard on that content would not get any money out of it. Because a lot of those people who are working behind the scenes doing whatever they're told need that money to live. I'm sure at least a majority of them are not in higher positions where they're living financially secure, even if they don't get any money out of their job. So please, before you act like you know what's best for a company, just do a little bit of critical thinking and reevaluate. And that concludes this video. Honestly, as I was recording this, it kind of turned into something that it wasn't supposed to originally be, but I was listening to Loona and I was like, let's just talk about Loona because I do stan them. Thanks so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, consider leaving a like, and if you want to see more from me, consider subscribing. And if there's anything that you want to say, please leave it in the comment section down below and let's talk. Thank you all again so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.